Hello. Says I'm live. Anyway, I'm hoping I'm live. Anyway, yeah, it's Sunday. It's just got 8 p.m. and I'm here today now to talk a little bit more about Doctor Who, about the season that we've just had. I've been a little bit ill today, so I've got a hot cup of coffee. I've been sleeping for most of the day. I've been absolutely out of it. So don't know what's happening. I've just had like cold shivers and that. So. I don't know how long I'll be able to stay on for, but I'm going to do my best to stay on for a bit. So yeah, I want to talk about Doctor Who, about the season that's just happened, but I also want to talk about some of the fan reactions to the show as well, because there have been some. I want to say some really unfair comments being made. Some really unfair comments being made. Oh, hello, how are you? Yes, I am live. Well, I'm living just about. I got my hot cup of coffee here. And I haven't got out of my dressing gown yet. I've been snugged up all day. So yeah, the season that's just happened with Doctor Who. And there have been some responses, good and bad, all over the place. I think if you're being balanced about the show, if you're being fair and balanced about the show, you'd say that look, well, the episodes that Chris Chibnall wrote aren't probably the strongest episodes, and that the other writers that he brought in to write other episodes have probably done a better job than he did. But I don't think that you can honestly look at the show and say, "Oh, it's the worst episode. It's the worst series of Doctor Who ever." I think, for me personally, season 8 of Doctor Who was by far the worst. Dressing gowns are very 10th Doctor at Christmas. Yeah, they're very me at Christmas right now. So yeah, for me, I think season 8 of Doctor Who was worse than season 11. But there are channels out there that are absolutely just shitting all over this show, and I wish I could say that they were. They come from people that I think are trying to justify just sort of pissing on the show, and. I don't want to name names. I will actually name names a little bit later on, because I think they do need to be called out on it. Because I think some of them are trying to be fair, but they surrounded themselves by a band of people that just want to see the series burn, as far as I can tell. And every time they say something negative, they got these people just sort of like rallying them up. But let's look at the positives of this show, shall we? They've still got people working on the show that have been working on the show since 2005. They've still got people working at Cardiff that really know the show inside and out, and they've really raised the standard on the production values of the show. That's been the one of the major positives of the show, is the production values of it. I saw a video recently which had a 1980s Chibnall at the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, so he must have some clue. Right, Chris Chibnall, he's been a Doctor Who fan for a long, long time, and he actually got to quiz John Nathan Turner about what was happening with Doctor Who during the 80s. He literally had a 1-to-1. He was in the sort of there was like a group of 12 or 15 of them, and they actually just got to quiz John Nathan Turner one-on-one, and that was about what was happening with Colin Baker, right? Now, at that time during the 80s, when Colin Baker was the Doctor, there were several things going on at the BBC. There were several things. People forget, right, that at the time when Colin Baker was the Doctor, during I think it was the 1986, I believe it happened, whereby the show got put on an 18-month hiatus. During that time as well, people don't remember this, but BBC Television Centre caught fire, and all the production departments for Doctor Who and people like Blue Peter and all those were actually relegated to actually working in the car park. Doctor Who was actually being made in the BBC Television Centre car park at the time because the studio had been burnt and they were actually refurbishing it. Also, there was asbestos there as well, so they had to remove that from the building. So there was all that going on. Plus, Jonathan Turner at the time wasn't really... he was trying to get away from Doctor Who. He didn't want to be a part of Doctor Who at the time. So, but they didn't have anybody else for the job, so they forced him to sort of, if you want to keep working for the BBC, then you keep making Doctor Who. Because, you know, Jonathan Turner had done it for about 6-7 years at that point. So, so yeah, when Chibnall got involved then with the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, he has been a fan of Doctor Who for such a long time, but he knows what he wants out of Doctor Who, and I think if you look back at what he was saying to Jonathan Turner at the time when Jonathan Turner was talking about what he was going to do with Doctor Who, you could tell why there was a bit of this clash. Why Chibnall has these different opinions to how his Doctor Who should be, because what happened back then was that Chris Chibnall was looking at it from a very even back then was looking at it from a very characteristic storytelling point of view. You know, he was very much all about, you know, does this work for this character? Does this work for this character? Whereas Jonathan Turner's going, look, we've got these stories. These are the stories. We're going to put these characters in these stories. And you can tell that's really what's happened with Chris Chibnall's writing overall. You know, when Chris Chibnall was writing Broadchurch, it's not a particularly brilliant story, Broadchurch. It's just got some great character writing in it. When he done his episodes of Torchwood, they were particularly brilliant stories. They had bloody good character moments in them, though. He's not a plot kind of guy. So when the fact that he turned around and said that these episodes were going to be 10 separate episodes didn't really surprise me, because, you know, the guy doesn't know how to do story arcs. He doesn't know how to do how to layer stuff in for use at a later time. He doesn't know how to leaf in these sort of these little trinkets. He's good at pulling reference from previous shows. He's good at being able to turn around and saying, "Oh, remember this from this episode." But he's not really good at layering in more stuff for the next season. I think if I was going to be honest about Chris Chibnall's writing, Chris Chibnall has two approaches really to writing his stories. One is that he tries to throw in as much stuff as he can to make the plot as busy as possible, and never get a satisfying resolve to any real one of them. But the other thing is that he likes to introduce a sort of a ticking clock, so that you're up against the clock to save the day. It's that sort of 007 kind of story arc, you know, like in Goldfinger. He's that sort of storytelling whereby you've got to get there and stop the bomb from going off. And as I've said before, my version of storytelling is I'd rather see the bomb go off, because how do you deal with the fallout? How do you deal with the cataclysm? How do you deal with? But that's not Chibnall's style. He's always prevented, and you even see that sort of thing happen in Kablam, whereby all the robots, sort of got blown up at the end. In what's the episode where with all the little boxes? Power of Three. It's literally a ticking clock. We're going to stop these from going off, so we'll wave the sonic screwdriver at the screen. And the Deus Ex Machina. Yeah, I don't know if it's Deus Ex Machina, but it's very much that sort of preventative. He's very much a let's stop this event from happening. Let's head it off of the past kind of thing. And usually it results in less than stellar storytelling from that point of view, because I mean, again, they did the same sort of thing. Witchfinders, I love Witchfinders, but the end of the story of Witchfinders is stopping the king from escaping. Pating, they actually stopped. The bomb actually did go off, but it went off inside Pating. So I was like, that didn't really matter. But they didn't prevent Pating from ripping apart the ship. It was just content. They stopped the bombs from going off in The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Nothing really happened in Ghost Monument. I'm trying to think of anything. Because Joy Wilkinson wrote Demons of the Punjab, so that was, she probably only just had the notes and points of Chibnall on that. Doctor and Stitch, yeah, exactly, yeah. Better than Lilo and Stitch, yeah. I'm trying to think of an episode that Chibnall has written, specifically Chibnall, because I think I'm mixing Chibnall with Gareth Edwards here, but I think Chibnall wrote the Cyberwoman story from Torchwood, which I think was pretty much. I'm gonna have to check on that, but it was either Chibnall or Gareth Edwards. It was one or the other. So yeah, this series so far has, for what we've seen of season 10, I would label it as I give it a 3.5 out of 5, and I think that was really being as fair as possible. I don't think that it deserved more than that. Which still puts it in the okay to good category, but it doesn't put it in the this was amazing box. But back to what I was saying about how some of these channels have been shitting on this show, unfairly so. Some of them have been putting up videos. There's one I had just now called Why Doctor Who Failed. It didn't fail. It didn't fail at all. It had the best viewing figures for Doctor Who in a decade. How can you look at that and call it a failure? Look, I'm sure the stories could have been better. I know the stories could have been better. If you've been watching my videos, you'll know that even the episodes that I loved, I still think could have been better. But to call the show a failure is just you're just lying to yourself. This show is not a failure at all. And there was even another channel. Do you know what? Screw it. I'm going to call these channels out by name. So the first channel that I'm actually on about is I think it's called Alterio Ori. I think it's called. I'm not sure. But that was the channel that was essentially going, well, why Doctor Who failed was because of this. And they were actually using numbers to say why Doctor Who failed. And the girl, I don't know who she is, but she either has to not be aware of the facts or is in blatant disregard of the truth. Because one of the stories, like I said, the stories could have been better, that's for sure. But to say that this show failed series 11 is just nonsense. And she might not, the girl doing the channel might not like series 11. She might not like the characters, she might not like the actors, she might not like any of that sort of stuff. But then one of the other things that she brought up was the Rotten Tomato score. And the Rotten Tomato score was about, I think it was about 46 at the time. I think it's dropped now, the audience score. I think it's dropped to like 38 or something like that. And the problem with that is that people are actually using that as a oh look how bad this is. Look how terrible this is. It only scored this much on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't care what the Rotten Tomatoes score is. I'm perfectly okay with sitting down watching a show. And the reason why I don't go by the Rotten Tomatoes audience score, by the way, is because I know that there are people who are flaming about this show, about the Series 11, and it would automatically vote it down no matter how well the show did. And I can actually, I've got some evidence of that actually, with another channel called Neurotic. Neurotic actually done a show. Where is it? It's called. I'm just looking on my other screen over there. It's called Doctor Who's 45% on Rotten Tomatoes audience score. So basically, he's looking at this audience score and going, yeah, look, it only scored this much. And then when he did it, he actually pulled up the Rotten Tomatoes score, and it showed his profile in Rotten Tomatoes, and he'd given it half a star. Well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but if you're going on Rotten Tomatoes and only giving a half a star regardless, that's, first of all, that's not being honest and fair to the show. And second of all, of course it's going to score low if you're just arbitrarily going on it and scoring half a star. I mean, look, let's be honest with the show, right? How can it have half a star, right? It's got great production values, right? Regardless of how shit the stories are, right? So that's got to be worth a star. It's got beautiful cinematography. That's got to be worth another half a star. So we're already up to 1.5 stars. The acting performances in this show, right, which I do take up with Neurotic as well, he actually accused Jodie Whittaker of not being able to act. What? What are you talking about? I mean, I get that she hasn't been handed the best material this season, but do your research, okay? Jodie Whittaker is not just a good actor; she is a great actor. And then you got performances of people like Bradley Walsh. I mean, seriously, and Sharon D. Clarke. Those character moments. How can you score this show at half? Like I try to be fair and balanced and even, right? And I will rip this show down if it's absolutely shite. And you know we talk about a show here with a rubber frog in the fucking thing, for Christ's sake. Apologies for my language there, but we are talking about a show that did actually try to get away with a rubber frog. Okay, so when the show is bad, it's bad, but you cannot possibly rate this show at half a star. That is just, you're being dishonest, you're being deceitful, you are just trying to tear this show down for no real, genuine, honest other reason than your own personal sort of, I don't like this show, therefore I'm going to let you know that it's awful, and therefore I am going to vote it down. And by the way, Neurotic is actually one of those people that openly admits that he did not like the idea of a female doctor. Now, I want him. I'm calling him out basically on that because I do find that Neurotic can be somewhat reasonable. But I think what's happened is that he's saying, "Oh, this was bad," and then he's got all his other cronies behind him, then going, "Yeah, it was terrible, it was awful, it was really shit." And he's going, "Oh yeah, it was really bad," and he's I guess he's feeding to them, and it's becoming. I don't want to say toxic fan base because I don't like the term toxic fan base. I think you should be allowed to, if something is bad, you should be allowed to say that's shit. That is absolute shit. What we got here? Languages fine, shows passion, mate. Oh, okay. No, well, I try to keep a can on it, but when it gets to me, when I see people attacking these sorts of things with just arbitrarily attacking them, without reason, without ration, without balance, or without consideration, it makes me feel like, you know, I don't want to stick up for this show. I shouldn't have to, but at the same time, I'm not gonna just openly piss on this show just because it's doing things that I don't like it to do. I mean, if you don't push this show into directions that you don't want it to go, if you deliberately avoid pushing this show into directions that you don't want it to go, how are you expected to get something new and different out of it? You're just going to be delivering the same thing over and over and over and over and over, right? Just to give you an example, right? I stopped watching Gotham in season 2, right? I stopped watching Gotham in season 2. The reason why I stopped watching Gotham in season 2 was because the show just disintegrated, as far as I'm concerned. But it wasn't the fact that I didn't stop watching it because it wasn't doing things I didn't want it to do. Like, it wasn't going into places that I didn't want the characters. For example, Jim Gordon became a murderer and he was sent to prison. Spoiler alert. And he was sent to prison, and it was like, how can you do this to the character of Jim Gordon, right? Well, it's new, it's different, and it actually does explore a different aspect of the character, something that I wouldn't have done. I look at Jim Gordon as this bold, upright police officer, this character, but it actually took the character into a new area that I would have never have taken it. Right? I would have never have done it. No, that's not why I stopped watching Gotham. The reason why I stopped watching Gotham was it kept introducing all these characters, and all the characters were exactly the same. That's why I stopped watching it, was because all the characters in Gotham just were all doing exactly the same. They were all just crazy. They were all just mental. There was no real need for these characters to be that way. There was no variation in them. It was the same old shtick after the same old shtick all the time. That's why I stopped watching it. It was because it's not because it was doing something that I didn't want it to do. It was just doing the same old thing over and over and over. I've actually caught up with Gotham as well, season 3 and 4. It's on Netflix. And unfortunately, season 3 is absolute tripe. But season 4, that's what was so great about Dark Graham in the finale. Exactly. You would never, if you don't take these characters and put these characters into situations, into areas that you don't want the show to go, then you're never gonna. It's just gonna be the same old stuff over and over and over. So the fact that they took Doctor Who and pushed it into an area that, look, I get what Chibnall did with the show, right? I get it, because he's more of a classic Doctor Who fan, right? Now, would classic Doctor Who work today? Because if people are saying, well, I'm not sure if this show is going to work or not, then you're going to look back at things like the Hartnell years. This show was very much in the Hartnell-Troughton years. Because I liken Jodie Whittaker's Doctor to Patrick Troughton's Doctor all the time. Everything that she does, she's very second Doctor in the way that her origin, then her regeneration, the fact that she comes, from a regeneration and is taught, doesn't know where the Doctor is, has this amnesia, starts referring to the Doctor as a third person. That's all Patrick Troughton. That's all second Doctor. Then she's got a bit of an entourage there. Yeah, same thing. Same thing with Patrick Troughton and William Hartnell and the fifth Doctor. So it is very, very classic Doctor Who, what they did. Where I think that the show failed, to be honest, is that I don't know how much, and this is going to be impossible for anyone to know, which is how much was working within the confines of the BBC's, mandate. Because the BBC has things that says you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. You can't show blood. You can't. It was. I'm trying to think of the Graham. I'm trying to think of the director's name, because the director of Waters and Mars, And because when they made Waters of Mars, the decision to have the makeup look that way for Waters of Mars was actually because the BBC said you can't go any further with that. That's why the makeup looked like it was all cracked around the mouth, and it was just because it was creepy enough as is. And they wanted to push it further, but the BBC said no. That's as far as you can go. So, so the BBC does have influence over this show. They are trying to, because people forget as well, you're trying to make a show that is applicable for 8-year-olds as well. I mean, all these people that have grown up with Doctor Who, that have grown up with the show, that are like, you know, oh, we want this show to get really sort of dark and serious, and forgetting the fact that this show is engineered for. When I was an 8-year-old, I used to watch this show, and I still do. Graham Harper, thank you very much. Yeah, so when I was a kid, I was watching the show, and there are certain limits. There's only so far you can go with. You can't do gore on Doctor Who. You can't. You can do slime, you can do icky stuff, but you can't really do gore. So you're working with inside certain limitations anyway. You show that's on at 7 p.m. on a Sunday night. That's going to have limitations. So there are confines that they're working in anyway. So how much of what Chibnall is doing, and again, we look, there's people are attributing stuff to what Chris Chibnall is doing, where it's actually not Chris Chibnall's job. And I've done this several times myself. So let's go over a couple of things, shall we? Chris Chibnall, he is not responsible for the hiring of actors. It's not his job. He is head writer. And that's another thing. Let's get into what Chris Chibnall's actual job is. There is no such thing as a showrunner. Okay, that's an Americanism that has been polluted thanks to things like Comic-Con and whatnot. Chris Chibnall is head writer. That is his job. That's what he does. If you want the showrunner is Nikki. Oh, I'm blanking on names here. She's the producer of the show. She would be considered then the showrunner, but there is no showrunner, right? She's the producer. Her job is to hire the actors. Now, is she having to sit down with Chris Chibnall and going, "What do you think would be good for this part?" Probably, more than likely. However, if she decides that person is not getting the part, that person's not getting the part regardless of what Chris Chibnall does. He is co-executive producer. He works for her. It is her job to hire the actors, the directors, all the staff that put together the show. That's what makes her the producer. As for head writer gets the writing staff in that puts together the series, right? Could they have done it a bit more of a writing room, and that might have ended up with a few better episodes? Possibly. But to say that, to put all these things on Chris Chibnall is not his job. Like, his job is not, when they said, oh, you know, Doctor Who's going to be 50 minutes now instead of 45 minutes, that's not his decision. That goes to Piers Wenger. He's the head of BBC Controller of Drama. That's his job to tell you how many episodes you get and how long the episodes are going to be. Like Chris Chibnall might turn around and say, could we have an extra 5 minutes? And then it's a yes or no. But the actual decision goes to Piers Wenger. So yeah, there's lots of stuff being shilled on because he's essentially Chris Chibnall is essentially the face man of the company, right? He's the visual interpretation of the be all and end all of the making of Doctor Who. When in actuality, he is part of a team. He is, don't get me wrong, he's far up the chain, but he's still only the head writer. So when it comes to actually making Doctor Who, there's more than one cog in the works. So yeah, I was born in 72, so my era was 4th and 5th. Yeah, I mean, look, I love the 4th era Doctor. Fourth era, Tom Baker, lots of Hammer horror type stuff in those storytelling there. In like Brain of Morbius, Horror of Fang Rock, all that sort of stuff. It's really good. I do like that sort of era. Fifth for me was, I'm always going to love Earthshock. I'm going to love that a bit. Caves of Androzani. Also, going to love that episode. I'm sort of like fourth, fifth, sixth, and seven. But then again, see, I used to always love going back and watching third as well. So because I was always on a Sunday on repeats. So, and I actually got to meet John Pertwee a couple of times. So, nothing to do with Doctor Who. He was playing Spotty Man in Super Ted. So anyway, back to Doctor Who and this series. I think a lot of people are putting a lot on Chris Chibnall. That's actually not him. That's actually nothing to do with him. I mean, Chris Chibnall does not decide the cinematography. And one of the guys that I follow as well and actually chat to, Nathaniel from Council of Geeks, has actually put stuff on Chris Chibnall, which is not his job. And not just on Chris Chibnall as well, but on other head writers for Doctor Who, like Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat, where, spoiler, for what exactly? What did I say? Did I accidentally slip up? Yeah, if I was gonna say, like, for what the others might have done, like, for example, one of the things that Nathaniel brought up was the fact that he didn't like the fact that some of Russell T Davies's writing led to scenes whereby you had, the bin that swallows Mickey and it burps after it swallows it. I was a destroyed 9-year-old when fourth. Oh, right, okay, yes. Wait, on his regeneration scene in Legopolis, such a weird. They all about talk about doing weird Doctor Who. Nobody, no, to this day, I have watched that episode like 30, 40 times at least throughout my life. I still got no good god idea what the hell the Watcher is doing. Who, what, where. All I know is that it just merges. The moment was prepared for, and good grief. Which that kind of disappointed me when they done Twice Upon a Time, because when they were saying like, we're going to go into this place at the sort of center of the universe and all that stuff, I was like, we need to go to this place that's key to information about the universe. When they did that, I was actually like, they're going back to Legopolis. Are they really going to do that? And of course they didn't. They went to this other planet. But I was really kind of like, oh my god, are we actually going to revisit a classic planet and an important one as well? Special drugs. Yes, that's what it takes to understand that episode, to understand the end of Legopolis. But I think if I'm going to be honest, if I'm going to build upon what they've done for Series 11 for Doctor Who, I'm going to re-examine the stuff that worked and the stuff that didn't. And we know the stuff that worked, which is Graham, Ryan, the Doctor to a certain extent. Yaz didn't work, right? Yaz just didn't work at all in this show. So either cut the character, back shelve her, or push her to the front and give us something extra to do. Give us something, because it was very few and far between did they ever remember that she was a police officer. It was very few and far between moments that they ever acknowledged that this girl has a skill set. I wouldn't be opposed to dropping Yaz off and coming back and revisiting her once they've got something really important or really good for her to do. I think the first thing I would actually do is examine about look at the directors of the show, because I think Jamie Childs, whilst being a decent director, knows very little about cinematography and knows very little about I think he was relying a lot on the team that was making the episode and was just trying to direct the actors. So I think he's much more of a stage type director and was looking for these sort of character moments, which is great, which is fine. But really, when it came to action type stuff, he really didn't understand action beats. He just didn't get how to pick the pace up for an episode and how to slow it down for these quieter scenes. I think what he did was worked well with the actors. I thought that definitely he's good from that point of view. But I think it just showed his inexperience. So for Series 12, I think I would actually look at a more experienced director. I think I'd probably actually bring in somebody like Glenn Winter to direct a couple of episodes of Doctor Who. If you don't know who Glenn Winter is, he's known as more of a CW type of director. He's piloted several CW shows, like what did he pilot? I think he didn't pilot The Flash, or did he? No, he piloted Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, Doom Patrol. He's done several episodes of Arrow. He's done several episodes of Smallville back in the day. In fact, he done my favourite episode of Smallville, which is Absolute Justice. Well, that spoiled me doing a top 5 list of Smallville, isn't it? So yeah, he's a real good visual action director. He started off as a Sparky and then became a cinematographer and then became a director. So he really understands how to move the camera for action. He's got a real good eye for it and for the pacing of those sorts of episodes. So that's one person I would definitely think about bringing in to direct a few episodes of Doctor Who, and that's Glenn Winter. Just give him a call and see if he's interested. You've got, the writers. I thought some of the guest writers that they had certainly this season done a better job than the head writer. Joy Wilkinson can come back whenever she likes. I thought she done an amazing job for the story that she got handed. So yeah, you need to focus on the story of Series 12. And that brings me on to another thing as well. Like I said, there have been these channels now that have been burning down Series 11. And I've said, I don't think that they're going to go ahead with Series 12. And which is nonsense, because they started making Series 12 4 weeks ago. It's already in production. Now, it won't be out till 2020. But as for will it be made, it's already being made. So getting some advice from Philip Hinchcliffe wouldn't hurt. Look, there's Andrew Cartmel. There's Eric Saward. There's lots of people that have worked on Doctor Who. But they don't have to just work on Doctor Who. They can work... people who... Because you've got to look at the people who make Legends of Tomorrow. They're doing their best to make Doctor Who. That TV show, they're doing their own DC version of Doctor Who and trying their damnedest to make Doctor Who and not get sued. But you don't need great sci-fi writers to be able to just have a great show. You can bring in these great moments, but what you need is somebody at the top, somebody, Chris Chibnall. What he needs is to bring these people into a room, get say 4 writers, right? Plus Chris Chibnall, that'll be 5, right? So you got 4 writers in the room, and you're gonna look at, say, maybe 10, maybe 12 episodes, right? They either do 10 like they did for Series 11, or they're gonna do 12, right? So you get them all in the room, and you get a big whiteboard on the wall, and you just go, right then, ideas. Give me some ideas of what we can do. Now, for me personally, I would actually go back and revisit older planets. I would love to go back. I'd love to go back and do Paladin, another Paladin story. I'd like to take some of the other classic, Ice World, from what's it called, Dragonfire. I go back. Why not? Why not see what's happened to these places? How why can't you just bring back these sort of not instead of just bringing back monsters? Why can't you go back and revisit these planets? See what happened after the Doctor had left, after or even go back before it happened. Go to the dawn of the Ice Warriors. Go to I'm just trying to think here. But there's so many things that they can do. There's so many things inside the Doctor Who universe that they don't have to keep making up villains just to try to push something along. They can actually go back and actually do a story that's actually Doctor Who. In fact, you could even actually do a Doctor Who like a Trials and Tribulations episode, whereby you could actually have the Doctor go back inside like a third Doctor story. So yeah, I do wonder if HBO or Netflix, keeping a British cast and team, could do better without some of the BBC shackles. Do you know? I think if you were going to shift, the problem I think of shifting like something like Doctor Who onto Netflix. One of the major issues that I think it would encounter if you shifted it onto Netflix. First of all, okay, yeah, it would definitely get a bigger budget, right? There's no we understand that. There's no ifs, buts, or maybes about that. Doctor Who can't keep up with people like Game of Thrones, right? It's just no chance. It can do a lot more location shooting now because it's far cheaper to shoot on location these days than it used to be, due to digital technology, but it just can't keep up with the effects budget, the cast budget, sets, costumes, all that sort of stuff. It just can't keep up. So shifting out to Netflix would definitely give it a boost. The problem there is that it is a BBC property. It is being made by BBC Wales, so that you're talking about moving the production as well, because Netflix ain't going to want to keep it at raw flock, and the BBC would have no reason to keep it at raw flock either. They would absolutely let Netflix sort of pick it up. But the problem with that then is that look at all the other shows that Netflix has done, such as Daredevil, Iron Fist, all the Marvel stuff, and now they're all getting cancelled. And these successful shows as well. Iron Fist season 2 was far better than Iron Fist season 1, cancelled, and on a cliffhanger as well. Daredevil season 3, leaps and bounds above everything, cancelled. Punisher, cancelled. How the bloody hell do you cancel Punisher? So yeah, it's to shift things onto Netflix. No, I understand that they're cancelling them because those are the properties of Disney, and Disney are going to do their own streaming service, and so they are going to end up wanting their property back to put on. I'm guessing Disney's probably going to pick up Daredevil and end up putting it on their channel. But it's, from a Netflix point of view, you could go darker and grittier with Doctor Who and try to make it scarier. How far do you push it though? Because for me, I watch, I used to watch Supernatural. I haven't watched Supernatural in a while, right? Because I binge watched 11 seasons back to back, and so after watching 11 seasons of Supernatural, I didn't want to watch the show for a while. And to me, the first season of Supernatural was the best one they ever made. I still love all the comedy stuff that they do, but I think, for being a dark, gritty, horror type show, season 1 of Supernatural was the absolute dog's bollocks. So could they take Doctor Who into that area? I suppose they could, but then again, you are dealing with the fact that it is going to be for the younger audience as well. So I think having this checks and balances with the BBC, and you're not going to get anything particularly outstanding out of Doctor Who now. The other thing that to remember here is that when they brought back Doctor Who in 2005, nobody gave a shit about the show, right? When BBC Wales said we're going to make Doctor Who, nobody gave a toss about Doctor Who. Nobody cared about it. Not even slightly cared about it. It had been dead and buried and gone for 15 years, and nobody gave a toss. So when BBC Wales said we're going to make Doctor Who, they weren't thinking about putting it out on prime time on BBC One. They were thinking that they were going to show it on BBC Wales, and then it was going to be picked up at a later date on BBC. Maybe go out on BBC Two, maybe BBC Three. They weren't planning on doing a Saturday night bonanza, but when they started making it, it was like, maybe we can sell this to the rest of the UK's BBC mainstream channel. And of course, they looked at some of the episodes and went, yeah, let's go for it. Well, now it's gone from being a show that nobody cared about to one of the biggest shows internationally sold around the world for the BBC. It's one of their biggest shows. I know the guys in the ties and the shirts don't want anything bad to happen to the show. That can be detrimental to the show because it stops you from being able to expand in as many directions as you can. But at the same time, you can understand why they would protect the show because the show is worth millions, hundreds of millions. The amount of merchandise, DVDs, and all that this show sells, and for how much it sells to each country. I think how many countries is it being sold to now? I think it's 105, right? So 105 countries are buying Doctor Who, and they're buying it at, I think it's just under about 350 grand an episode. That's a lot of money. That is a shit ton of money. I mean, I would have to check on that. I'm not entirely sure, but I do think it's about 350 grand an episode to air Doctor Who in a separate country. It could be more than that, but I think that's around about the ballpark number for purchasing an episode of Doctor Who for broadcast. I would have to, but again, I would have to check on that. So they are making a shit ton of money out of this product, and they don't want anything bad to happen to it. Why would they? But that does leave you in a restricted space then, because obviously they're not going to do anything that's going to stop the younger audience or the older audience from wanting to watch it. They're not making Doctor Who for everyone. They are making Doctor Who for everyone. They're not making it for niche fans. So they're not making it for the fans that want it to be really, really dark. Right or wrong, Top Gear going tits up after huge dent in the BBC. Yeah. So again, what's happening with Top Gear? Top Gear is a problem. But again, what they've done with Top Gear. I think people didn't have a problem when Matt LeBlanc was presenting it. But again, the problem that they had was that they started bringing in people that were presenters and not people that really knew anything about cars. And it was a real problem when they got rid of Clarkson and me and what's his face? Oh, Jesus Christ! I'm blanking on names this evening. I tell you what, I need to take more paracetamol and lie down. I tell you. But I think firing. They didn't necessarily fire Matt LeBlanc, but he was the best thing about the show on Top Gear, and now I mean, I thought last season's season of Top Gear was the best one they'd done for a while. Hammond, that's right. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, Richard Hammond. I thought last season's Top Gear was the best one they'd done for a while, but they can't compete with Grand Tour because people have already invested in the dynamic. But the problem is that when they did Top Gear, the Top Gear wasn't the show. We weren't watching it for the show. We were watching it for Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond, and James May. We weren't watching it for. We didn't really care about the cars. We knew they were going to get up to lunacy, but that's what we were tuning in for. Was those guys? We were tuning in to see sort of these three aging nutcases messing about in cars. So when they've gone to doing Grand Tour, which is a brilliant show. I love Grand Tour. Even though it's pretty much Top Gear, which it is, they've tried to copy that format and graft it onto just presenters, and it doesn't work. What worked with Matt LeBlanc presenting it was the fact that there was a bit of natural charisma going on, and there was a little bit of fun that they were having, and there was a sense of fun. There was a sense of friendly fire going back and forth with Top Gear, but not enough. And now that they're going to change the show again, the presenters, you can keep changing the presenters all the time. If you're not going to change the format, the show's going to suffer. And again, that goes back to Doctor Who. You can keep changing doctors, and you can keep changing writers and that all the time. If you're going to stick within the same format, where do you think the show is going to go? It all comes back down to one very simple thing, and that's the writing. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to how well are these shows written. Because Doctor Who is the show that can do anything. Doctor Who is the show that can tell an intergalactic giant war spread straight across the galaxy, and can also tell a story set in somebody's garden shed. It has that range and scope to do just that. It has the widest reach it can possibly have. If the show isn't going to succeed, then it's not going to succeed based on the fact that the writing isn't good enough. I'm just going to touch back on what I was saying earlier about when people on these other channels are saying that the show's failed this season. You might not like the show this season. I've certainly had problems with this show this season. I think there are episodes of this season's show that could have been much better. There are certainly episodes of this show that, for me, I thought were tripe. But you can't look at this show and call it a failure. You can't, just off the numbers. And by the way, when we're talking about the numbers here, there's no good saying that the BBC are going to put out these numbers to make it look like this show is a success. Because the BBC don't handle the numbers. This numbers is handled by a company called Barb. They do all the ratings for 222 channels broadcast in the UK. They cover the overnights, they cover the consolidated. And they do all the viewing figures for all the metrics for all the channels. So when it comes to the viewing figures, the BBC aren't lying about it. And even if they were, Bob would be there to go, no, look, that's exactly what the numbers are, because we handle the metrics. Just to clarify something as well about the metrics as well, the consolidated are more accurate than the overnights. So if you're seeing two sets of numbers being done, the overnights are pretty much a guess. So the overnights are done via Bob, and what they do is that they are, I believe it's somewhere in the region of about 5,500 homes around the UK. And they monitor what sort of shows that they are watching, and then they upscale them for the rest of the UK, and that gives them the overnight figures. But at the end of the day, the overnights are pretty much a guess. Whereas the consolidated is looking at the people that have got onto things like iPlayer, onto streaming services, and all that sort of thing. And they're looking at who's clicked on what page on when, and what show. And then they take those metrics and put it together, and that gives you the overall figure. So when people talk about the overnight viewing figures for Doctor Who, bear in mind it's just a stab in the dark. They don't actually know. There is no way for anyone to know how many people actually tuned into the show during the overnights. It's impossible. The BBC broadcast the signal; they don't get anything back. That's not how it works. So they don't actually fully know who's watching in the overnights, but the Consolidated actually does give them more of an accurate figure. Certainly not a failure. Maybe a few punctures on the road, but in general, I enjoy it still. I wasn't overly enthused about the sex change, but I also give it a chance. I'm glad I did. Look, I stood by from the very first day that they announced Jodie Whittaker was going to be the Doctor. I said that I'm all for it. I still am, right? I still don't believe they've touched on the real stories that I think they could do with Doctor Who. Again, Witchfinders kind of went there, but I think that there are certain stories that they are, for whatever reason, they don't want to get their hands dirty when dealing with these sorts of stories. But the Doctor is a woman now. And if you're going to do a time travel story where you travel back in time, they did, like I said, they did a bit of it with Witchfinders. But I think they could touch on it a little bit more. The fact that if you're going back to a point before women had the vote, then it's very, very difficult to look at. I mean, there are people out there that still, to this day, have made contributions to science that are only these days. If you were at any point like watching Bill Nye Saves the World on Netflix, you'll know that there are several scientists. They do this segment called Mad Scientist, where they do this little bit whereby they take a historical scientific figure that's been misrepresented or swept under the carpet in favor of their male counterpart, claiming all the credit. And so there are plenty of circumstances where the Doctor could travel back in time and face a circumstance much like that, and they haven't really gone there. And I think that's been the one of the major problems with this season, with season 11, is that I think a lot of the time the show has been kind of middle ground, but it hasn't been daring enough to really, because even if it fails, right, even if it doesn't succeed, if it tries something daring and it doesn't succeed, at least you can say, well, look, I mean, at least they give it a go. Whereas with season 11, it's been fairly even. I think, look, Rosa is still a prime episode for season 11, and I don't give a damn what anybody says, whether they love the show, whether they absolutely revile it and hate it, whatever they want to do with it. Even if they are the greatest Doctor Who haters of all time, you cannot, under any circumstances, logically watch Rosa and not think that is not the best historical Doctor Who episode ever made. They've never done one anywhere near as good as Rosa, ever. They've always done these Doctor Who episodes whereby they've picked up the historical figure and they've gone off and had a fun adventure where they've been fighting aliens or what have you, but they've never actually historically touched on the story or the historical story of a character in such a way ever. If they do that, though, there will be a load of criticism about pushing agendas. Yeah, but at least it doesn't matter if they get hit with the pushing agenda, because they're going to get hit with that anyway. So even if people do say, "Oh, you're just trying to push an agenda," they're already doing that. So you may as well take that punch. And if it's a great episode, it's a great episode. And if it's not, well, it's not. But to not really pull the trigger and to not make the attempt is far worse, I think, because they're going to get accused of it anyway. So they may as well, they may as well do it. And again, this season, my favorite episode is Witchfinders, because I just think it's the most Doctor Who-ish episode. I wish that they had gone a little further in that episode though, with the whole witches coming back from the dead. But still, I mean, that was just that for me. That's what I like about the Doctor Who episodes. Those sorts of style of stories. What else? Demons of the Punjab, great story. As an observation story, it was a great story. I'm really. Where is my? I've got my list around here somewhere. Where is my list? Because I wanna just have a quick gander here. Yeah, I mean, look, arachnids in the UK. Oh dear. I mean, as just a beastie monster of the week kind of thing, arachnids in the UK it could have gone a bit further. I think arachnids in the UK is one of those episodes whereby you realise that the season was just going to sort of stay in this area where it wasn't really going to push it in either direction, because arachnids in the UK was one of those ones whereby, again, they should have it wrapped really easy, it wrapped really quickly, and the resolve was, well, they're going to die anyway. And again, it was kind of like they sort of shot at spiders, planet of spiders, and again, there was a lot of arbitrary characters thrown into that story that didn't need to be there. Sananga Conundrum, was they got a job at doing a Gremlin story, but they made it. I think Pating was one of those things, like, you just know they were all sort of like 10 and 12-year-old teenage girls sort of are going to be wanting a Pating for Christmas. You know, you can see the fact that they're going to be making like a Pating backpack and things like that. But yeah, it was a very, again, it was one of those stories that just kind of went and didn't really have anything endearing for the Doctor to do in that episode. I mean, I think it tried to step up the fun with Kablam. I think it did try to, but Kablam was one of those episodes. It was kind of like somebody had pulled the teeth out of Robots of Death, and it was a very similar story to Robots of Death in that it had this person, this activist then, that was going to be using these robots for an evil purpose. But again, I just don't think that it did it as well. And when you've got a comparable story like that, where you could go back and watch Robots of Death and go, wow, okay, this is Kablam, but a much better story. I think that becomes one of the failings of. That's what I mean with Series 11, with its failings. Even the strongest episodes, you can always look at the strongest episodes that it did and go, you don't need that. Check that away. You don't need it at all. Again, I think that it had a decent start. It didn't have a very strong start, but I would say I would put Woman Who Fell to Earth above Deep Breath. I would put it above. I would probably put it above Christmas Invasion as well. It's not higher than Rose though, and it's definitely not higher than 11th Hour. I think 11th Hour hit so many things on the head that it was probably the best regeneration story they've ever done. I don't see how they could do top that as a regeneration story. Because I mean, look, Woman Who Fell to Earth is definitely better. Let's bring in some of the classics, shall we? Is Woman Who Fell to Earth better than Time and the Rani? Yes, it is. Is it better than Twin Dilemma? Yes, it is. Is it better than Castrovalva? Yes. Is it better than Robot? Well, Oh, is it better than Robot? That's a damn good question. Technically, yes. Story-wise, no. Is it better than Spearhead from Space? Absolutely not. Is it better than Power of the Daleks? No. And we've obviously got the first one then, which is an Unearthly Child. Is it better than that? Hell no. So it is, in terms of regeneration stories, better than quite a substantial chunk of Doctor Who overall. But yeah, I mean, it's very much above average for a regeneration episode, I think. As for the finale, how was the finale done? Well, the finale could have been better. But I still, if anybody's got any problems with Series 11, I could arguably look back at Series 8 and go, well, it's not Kill the Pissing Moon, and it's not bloody Forest of the Night. It's not Robots of Sherwood, and it's not Into the Dalek. It's, I think, because I will go back and look back at Series 8 of Doctor Who and say probably the best episode of Season 8 was Listen. And that was it. That was the only good one. The next good episode of Capaldi's run doesn't happen until Heaven Sent. Maybe that's a little bit unfair. Maybe Magician's Apprentice might be, coming around to sort of getting into the Season 9 starts. It's ups and downs. Season 9. So I would rank Season 11 higher than Season 8 and higher than Season 9. I'd put it's somewhere in the mix of Season 10 and Season 7, say. Because it's definitely not the dizzying highs of Matt Smith's second season, where you've got Goodman Goes to War and all that stuff. It's definitely not in that crowd. I would liken it very much to David Tennant's first season. Season 11, and maybe even the Christopher Eccleston run. I don't think it's as good as Christopher Eccleston's run in terms of Doctor Who type stories. I think that because again, I don't mind Rose as a good kickoff episode. Then you got, what is it? End of the World, Unquiet Dead. It's going to be better. Look, if you look back at the Christopher Eccleston season, you've got the Slitheen plot with World War III, Aliens of London. It's not a highly revered episode. You've got The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. Fantastic. Fan-bloody-tastic. Dalek. Fantastic. Boomtown. Not so much. Bad Wolf. Just okay. Part of the Ways. Yes. It's good resolve. So yeah, I think if you're being fair and looking at the whole season 11 run, I think it's on par with what most Doctor Who is doing. But yeah, does it need to step it up? Absolutely needs to step it up. So, but to actually just flog this season for what it is just purely unfair. Anyway, I've been going on for over an hour. Venting for over an hour, so I am actually going to call it quits, and I'm going to say let me know what you thought of season 11 of Doctor Who. And next week, I will be back next Sunday. I know it's close to Christmas next Sunday. I think it's the 23rd, is it? Sunday the 23rd, yes. So Sunday the 23rd, I'll be back to talk more Doctor Who. I think next week, though, I'm going to be doing a bit more classic stuff. And I'm going to be looking a bit more into the classic era of Doctor Who, with I think I want to start off with the Hartnell stuff. So that's going to be fun because it's got some of my favorite classic episodes in the Hartnell era, in episodes like Space Museum and The Chase. So that's what I'm going to hopefully want to start chatting about next week. So that'll be next week, next Sunday at 8 p.m. usual time. Anyway, thanks for joining me. And again, if you've got anything you'd like to say about season 11 of Doctor Who after this podcast, then you can drop it in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like this video as well. But until next week, I will see you later, guys.